Everybody, it's David coming to you today from Dallas, Texas, my office. I still haven't put anything on the wall behind me. I don't know. Sometimes it looks like it's a mugshot. All I need is the height lines behind me. But you're going to see, I need to explain this. You're going to see the next 4 videos, the remaining videos in the class are going to be shot here in succession. I leave on a 4-week cruise next week, and while cruise ships have done a great job with internet connection, so I won't have any problem communicating via Skype and other things, the ability and the bandwidth that I have to upload videos from where I'm going to be on the ship, just impossible. I tried doing it the last time that I went on a cruise, and I just couldn't make it work. So I'm going to do these ahead of time. But in the meantime, make sure that we still, if you need me, you can contact me and we can arrange a chat. I wished I was going to be able to film some of these from where I'm going. I have a bucket list place that I've always wanted to go, and it's St. Petersburg, Russia. So we're going to be in St. Petersburg, Russia on this trip. I'm probably going to shoot some video there for a successive class, but by that time you'll be either out of the degree program, congratulations by the way, or onto another class. So my apologies. For the next 4 weeks you're going to see the same location. You'll see me in the same shirt, so I don't want you to think that I'm just wardrobe challenged, even though I do wear a lot of Eddie Bauer, being from Seattle. So it seems like I'm a walking Eddie Bauer ad. But anyway, enough of all that. I just wanted to explain that up front. Let's talk about Lesson 3 review, Lesson 4 preview for ECBA 406. So let's get started. The discussion board this week talked about, what I really wanted you to do was to talk about a company that was in trouble, or a company that's potentially dying, and some of the challenges that they have. One of the key things that you'll see in business today are the challenges that it takes to just remain for years on end. And there are fewer and fewer companies that are able to do that because the consumer changes, technology changes, and if a company is not able to keep up with it, it can be a real challenge. Yesterday, I was listening to CNBC that I do every morning, and they mentioned that BlackBerry had announced their earnings, and it was down, the stock was down another 8%, and I'm thinking, BlackBerry's dead. I'm not sure what they're trying to hang on to. I guess they have some other types of software businesses, but they missed it. They missed it several years ago when people moved away from keyboards on phones, and they got late to the game on what some of the Apple and Android devices were able to do, and so they missed their opportunity. And as I say, the business community is littered with people who've missed their opportunities. So your challenge was to find one. I had asked that you didn't pick an obvious one, so my hope is that as I begin to grade these here in the next day or so, that you have some really creative ones for me there. The assignment this week talked about a couple of review opportunities, and I wanted you to take a look at a business and look at it from a couple of evaluation perspectives. One was VRIO, and the other was value chain analysis. Now, one of the key things that you'll see in the value chain analysis is the assumption is that at each spot along from acquisition of raw materials all the way through selling it to the end consumer, the supply chain, if you will, that each area should add value. And one of the key things that companies do today is they evaluate each step in the supply chain to see if it's adding any type of value to it. And one of the comments that I made to a student who'd asked me a question this week on the question is that, for example, if a company can ship a finished good or a finished product directly to a consumer versus sending it to a warehouse and sending it to a retail store and then ultimately getting to the consumer, if they could do that, then what they're going to be able to do is shrink the supply chain, but in doing so add value back to their organization because they don't have these unnecessary steps that they go through. And so that's one of the things that and one of the examples that you can have in value chain analysis and going forward. And companies do this all the time, and so you'll probably see that. And many of you may have already seen it in the businesses that you're in. So that was lesson 3. Lesson 4 talks about, in the discussion question this week, talks about outsourcing. Now, I want you to take a step back and take a breath on this one, because one of the big challenges that I see with students on this one is they look at the question, they say, talk about the pros and cons of outsourcing, and they immediately put their consumer hat on and they say, outsourcing is bad, it's awful, it costs American jobs, and all the other stuff. Now, that can be true, all right? So don't want to be naive and think that doesn't happen. But companies outsource for other reasons. And some of the other reasons, what I'm wanting you to look at this week, I'll just give you one, for example. At Conagra, when we talked about outsourcing, we would actually send some of our process out to another company. It wasn't China. It was some other company, like in market research. Because there were market research companies who had more data, they had more skilled individuals, and could come up with better information than we could on our own. And so we would outsource market research to Nielsen Company, to IRI, and to other companies like that. And so just don't take a blanket approach and say outsourcing is bad, it's awful, and everything else. Make sure that you take a holistic, I hate that word, take a broader look at the whole concept of outsourcing as you're investigating this particular topic. This is a good one for you and your discussion boards to use examples, maybe personal experience, and some of the research that you find along the way. Okay, so that's the discussion question this week. All right, and let me see the the assignment this week. I had to look at my notes on this one. The assignment this week talks about, there's a case study that's presented in the book. And again, the case study is a little bit old, so what I'd ask you to do is to read the case study, look at the case study, but then use some current information. And it talks about Kmart and Sears. Two companies, well, they're not two companies, they're all part of Sears now. But a company that bought a struggling company and continued to struggle, okay? And so the challenge here is to take a look at this case study, look through the case study, bring some current information into it, and talk about some of the challenges that you see with that company going forward. All right? So that is lesson 4 preview. All right? If you have any questions this week, make sure you give me a call. Last week's quiz was a little bit more difficult for some of you. This week's quiz is going to be a little more difficult for some of you as well. And so I'd encourage you to make sure that you look at the lectures each week. Make sure that you read the text before you begin to take the quiz at the end of the week. All right? Have a great week, and I will have the next video done here in just a second and post it for the next week. All right? Great. Take care.